Spider-Man No Way Home. Now this film, let me say here. And again, full spoilers. I'm not doing no short spoiler-free version. If I had got this video out sooner, it's been a week since the movie came out, I probably would have did a spoiler-free and a spoiler version of this review, but I'm hopping right in. I personally, for my money, right? And this, keep in mind, I'm 35 years old. I have been around for all the 3 different franchises that Sony has had with Spider-Man, 4 if you count Into the Spider-Verse, but nonetheless. So with that being said, this is my favorite Spider-Man film. And I'm not saying that it's the best, right? I can make that distinction between something being the best and just my favorite. I do think Spider-Man 2 is such a well-made film that I do understand why people put that above it. But for my money, just everything that they did in this movie, when you talk about all the different, so much could have gone wrong, right? When people, like with the Amazing Spider-Man, even with Spider-Man 3, talked about how the too many villains weighed down that movie. They paced this one so well. And yes, there's some plot holes and things like that with Who Knew Spider-Man, and yes, those things exist. But when you look at the distinct 3 different acts in this movie, there is the act of Peter trying to get his life in order, trying to figure it out after Mysterio blew the lead on his identity and everything like that, and him trying to figure it out, finding out that he's not going to be able to get into MIT, dealing with that. And then the mid act is really setting up the multiverse, him trying to problem solve what Mysterio's exposing him did to him, going to Doctor Strange, right? And then we get the introduction of all these different villains and trying to figure out. And then the distinct third act starts after the scene with them all in Happy Hogan's house and him trying to cure them all. And when Green Goblin takes back over Norman Osborn's body, that's a distinct darker third act of this movie that we then do get introduced to the Spider-Man from the previous franchises. Those 3, anything could have fell apart to make those 3 different acts not be as cohesive, right? Or one to drop the ball and completely take you out the movie. We talk so often here, and I talk so often about how movies that can't nail the ending can somehow take you so much out of the movie. This film was damn near a perfect film. And shout out to the director of this film, because what he did with this trilogy, right? And we know Marvel has their hands in it, and nobody's saying that it's just him or anything like that, and he didn't write the movie either. But what they did with this trilogy, making a trilogy of an origin story for Spider-Man, like that's what this is. These 3 movies were just the origin story. So when you hear things like Sony and Marvel interested in doing another trilogy with Tom Holland, it makes sense, because they really gave us something that we felt like this could be. When Tom Holland came out and said this was an end, this is like the end to the beginning of Peter Parker. He is now set off in a completely different place than what he started in, and has no support, no loved ones around him. People don't even know he exists. So everything is him reestablishing and really being on his own. But I know I'm getting so far ahead of myself because I love this film so much, is that what they did with the start of this movie is they set you back in this universe. They got us comfortable. They got us in Peter's head and understand the anguish that he feels in dealing with being exposed. We also get some fan service with having Matt Murdock show up and him being played by Charlie Cox. But then once the multiverse aspect of this movie and the villains start coming, that fight with Doc Ock on that bridge was a great scene for so many different reasons. It really sets up so much of Doc Ock not knowing really what he is. The change in him once he sees that it's not his Peter, right? When he sees that it's not his Peter, and then Peter Parker trying to figure this out. And then once Doctor Strange pulls them back into the sanctum and explains what he's going on, you see Peter like, what the hell did I do? Now, as that goes on more, when we first see Electro, he's different. And then when we see Flint Marko pop up and all that stuff happening, you really start to see Peter try to process. It goes from, hey, I just need to get these guys home so I can go back on with my life, to I feel for these, right? Because this is me, right? I feel for these people. And then Norman Osborn going to Feast, seeing Aunt May telling Peter that he should help him, where Peter is like, it's not my problem. Then once Peter finds out, no, some of these guys are destined to die. And you see the weight of that hit on him because they're killed by Spider-Man. such great acting from Tom Holland throughout this movie, right? Such great, just really everything. This story from top to bottom was a great Spider-Man story. And then when you get to the point of him trying to cure these guys and figuring it out for the most part, the Green Goblin cure would not have worked overall, but when you see Otto Octavius healed and the clarity that comes over him and the joy, right? The gratefulness that comes over him and Peter helping him. And even when he's talking to Norman Osborn and saying, hey, you're about to be whole again, right? Because he saw this man fall, right? He saw him go from a great scientist to somebody who was impelled by their own glider. And so to have that joy and to see him like be appreciative for Norman Osborn, such a great scene there. And then the scene where his spider sense kicked in and Peter's trying to figure out what is wrong. Everybody around him is like wondering. And you see Peter take that moment to really trust his instincts and realize that it's Norman Osborn. And you see Norman's change, his whole demeanor. And Willem Dafoe is such a great actor because there is such a distinction between Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin. He does such a great job for a role that he has not played in almost 20 years to come back in and to be able to seamlessly give a performance that really feels like it was done right after his original performance in that first Spider-Man film. Just great acting overall. And then the ending of this film, Peter having the selfless moment of realizing, hey, I caused all this, right? I caused this because of me not being willing to just deal with what happened and try to figure it out. Me wanting to have, everyone says it in here. Green Goblin says it. Him trying to live in two different worlds. Doctor Strange says it to him at one point. Him trying to have everything that he wanted, putting the universe, right? The multiverse at risk and so many other people's loved ones, and him realizing that the decision and the sacrifice that he has to make to lose all of his loved ones after he already lost Aunt May, to lose his best friend Ned, to lose MJ. And yes, he did originally think, hey, I'm going to go find you guys after this. And then that final scene in the donut shop with MJ and that conversation to see, and Tom Holland does such great acting in that moment, right? That may be the best acted scene of Tom Holland's career so far, because not very many words are said, but it's all conveyed through his physical acting, through the facial expressions. And when he sees that wound over MJ's head, you understand everything, every thought process and everything that just went through his head. You see that by the way that he depicted that scene. Powerful, powerful. No Way Home to me is easily for me my favorite Spider-Man film. And yes, you kind of have to have the trilogy to get to this point, but then to end it with him on his own. No more tech-based suits and that fixes a lot of complaints that people had with Spider-Man was really Iron Man Jr. to go back to a suit that he built himself and that smile, right? That little bit of joy that he's trying to pull out, even though he's in his darkest place, has no support, no loved ones, none of this. Nobody knows this man exists for the most part. And to go out and still be able to be Spider-Man. It's the emotional ending they were trying to get with the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and they did a pretty good job here. But even better job here. And then the fan service, the scenes in that third act of the three different Peter Parkers, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland Spider-Mans all interacting together. Great. That scene where they find him on the roof, and with great power comes great responsibility, when Tobey Maguire finished that. And then Andrew Garfield says, Uncle Ben said it. Like, hey, Andrew Garfield gets such a bad rap for his Spider-Man. Yes, those movies, I think the second one more than the first. I really do enjoy The Amazing Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield, whether it's growth, whether he had this all along, he's an amazing actor. And the depth, he has the most emotional depth of the other two Spider-Man that pop up. And him getting that scene where he gets to redeem himself in a way by saving Mary Jane. And the fact that they gave him that moment, right? They gave him that moment where you see the grief and the anguish and the joy in a way of like being able to save her all come over his face. Again, great physical acting there from him. But the scenes of all three Spider-Man coming together, figuring it out, doing their cures, the whole meme thing of them pointing together, and Ned, and the scene where MJ is looking at them as like, it's three of yous. This was the fan service done correctly, right? Because it was in service of the movie. And yes, in a way, if you want to if you want to break it down and think about it, the fact that Andrew Garfield was just out there in his Spider-Man uniform for a day and nobody saw him when like all this stuff was going on the news and stuff, it does raise some questions. But overall, like the way that Marvel did this, right? Because they didn't have to use Sony Spider-Man. And I know Sony still owns Spider-Man in general, but the way that they worked that out, and retroactively now, these are part of the multiverse of the MCU. Just great things from this movie as well. I can't do it and talk about it enough. I'll have another in-depth review going over it more, me and Andrew Bello at some point. So be on the lookout for that. But that's my review on Spider-Man No Way Home. Just an amazing, amazing film. For my money, one of the better ones. Probably my second favorite comic book movie of this year, next to Shang-Chi. But let's get into something I wasn't as high on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, and that is the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus.